Aloha, beautiful beings, and welcome to another episode of the Yoni Havana podcast, where we explore consciousness, looking into how things work in the universe so we can enjoy life more and become more whole. My guest today is longevity coach and biohacker Zack Loewenstein. In this episode, Zack explains what is biohacking, the importance of learning about your genetic lineage, how to improve brain function, and he also shares how he was initiated into his health and wellness journey and how he manifested his dream job. A couple of notes on this episode. The first 50 minutes are all about biohacking, which is mostly about physical health. Then we get into Zack's deeply profound and mystical journey. Also, if you'd like to see Zack's inspirational paintings, watch the video podcast. If you find value in this conversation, please share it with someone you love. So enjoy this educational and mystical conversation with Zack Loewenstein. Aho. Zack, thank you for coming on to the show. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, brother.
It's an amazing opportunity to do this for the first time, where we have a conversation. We've never had a conversation before, and we're doing it on the mic and on camera.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So, I don't know that much about you. I do know that, first of all, we have a great mutual friend, David Green, told me great things about you. I've seen you a little bit on social media, and I know that you go by BioHack Zack. And I love biohacking. I've been doing biohacking for years now. I think there are a lot of great benefits of biohacking since we live in very sterilized environments.
Totally.
And I'd love to hear from you, what is your, definition of biohacking, and what is the importance of biohacking?
Yeah, so I would say if you distill it, biohacking is just trying to change your biology using either technology, supplements, diet, lifestyle, or ancestral wisdom to do so. And there's a lot of different answers to what biohacking actually is. But I think if you distill it down to like the root, it's just trying to change how you feel, how you age, and how you look. So, and can you remind me of the second question with that?
Yeah, I mean, your definition, what is important? So, I mean, you answered them, I think, longevity, feeling well.
Yeah.
What are some of the main biohacking that, techniques, practices that you do for yourself and that you promote for your clients?
For sure. Well, I think hormetic changes from heat and cold are really popular right now because they really pay dividends in the long term for overall longevity and health. But also just simply dieting, whether that's going plant-based or going carnivore, or just becoming more conscious of what you're putting in your body. I would consider that a biohack. But you could also get super high tech and use technology that formerly was only used with professional athletes or the military, such as like ARX or Vasper or Carol bikes. Like there's a lot of different technologies out there that you could utilize, but most people don't need that. You don't need to do the $1,000 NAD drips. You could literally just take control of your diet, get some sunlight, get hot and get cold, and just really try to get the best sleep possible. And you'll notice over time, your baseline of health, your baseline amount of vitality just gradually increases the more you stay consistent with that kind of stuff.
Cool. On diet and nutrition, what does your nutrition look like?
So I'm a huge believer in balance. I don't think being vegan necessarily will bring you longevity and good health, but I also don't think carnivore will either. I think plants and colors are imperative for gut microbiome diversity. And lots of people that go carnivore they're just really thinking about the physical aspects of macronutrition, and they're not necessarily considering the microcosm of the gut microbiome, which is like trillions. They're saying anywhere between 30 and 45 trillion bacteria and viruses and fungi living in your gut. And it's a very sensitive environment. And the reason why you'd want to increase your gut microbiome health is because these are the bacteria that are producing peptides, that are helping produce hormones and neurotransmitters. Like they're a fundamental characteristic of good health is having a good microbiome.
So Let's dive into this a little bit. I think it's an important topic. Meat, plant based. You call this dieting for. I have seen so far that people that either go carnivore, they go plant based, they see some short term results in the beginning. I think it's because they're eliminating some other foods and perhaps not even non foods from their diet, such as whatever empty calories, chips, plastics. I mean, who knows even what's in food these days, fast food or whatnot. And I think once they do that for a short period of time, they lose weight, they feel better, they have better energy. On the long term, as you were saying, they're just avoiding something and they're not being as adaptable and not getting the whole gamut of nutrition from the earth. And I think everything that the earth has to offer, that we have been in our local and seasonal environments, we've been adapted to eat, whether that's meat or plants or whatnot. I'm curious if somebody now is not doing anything, they're debating between carnivore or plant based. They want to get started somewhere because they are experiencing perhaps eczema or just fatigue, brain fog, whatever a condition that they're not feeling very good in their body.
Mhm.
What do you think is a good starting point?
That's a great question. I think a great starting point is first learning about your genetics and where you came from, because someone from Latin America versus someone from Asia versus someone from Europe historically ate entirely different diets. So I would kind of go back into your own genetic lineage, see where you came from, and then try to emulate what your ancestors ate, but also incorporate more whole foods. Like I tell clients, if it existed 500 years ago, you could eat it. You're fine. It's really these new modern empty calories, these modern processed foods, these seed oils that are really causing the health issues that we're seeing in the obesity crisis. But if you simply just keep it simple and eat meat, vegetables, maybe a little bit of grain when you're exercising, most people would see significant health improvements just by doing so. But what I would recommend to an Asian client versus a Northern European client would be totally different, because
Mm.
people from the East tend to eat more carbohydrates, eat a little bit less protein, less fats. So if they were to eat more of, let's say, like a carnivore or keto-ish diet, they could likely have some health issues. And then same goes with people from Latin America who eat lots of fruits and rice and beans and lots of carbohydrates and meats. They may not do as well with a high fat, higher protein diet. So truly, like, the best answer is to just get as much information about you as possible, whether that's through genetics or gut microbiome testing or just experimenting, just old school, taking 6 weeks just to see how you feel on a new diet.
If one finds out that they have specific type of heritage, right? So say the European, where is a good resource if for them to look up on what foods will sit well with them before they are doing an elimination diet or noticing themselves how they're reacting? Is
Yeah.
there a resource to take a look at?
Yeah, well, I use 23andMe, and there's some privacy concerns with 23andMe, but I felt like the data was just too important not to know it. So with 23andMe, you can find out if you're a fast carbohydrate metabolizer or fat
Really?
metabolizer. Like, you can learn about little snips regarding your metabolism that I found to be very important. And you can also take that raw data and send it to hundreds of different companies to get more information about your health. Companies like Genome Linked, Prometheus, although Prometheus is kind of questionable, and Self Decode. Yeah, Self Decode is another really good one. My buddy, Dr. Tyler Pansner, he does genetic counseling, and he would be an excellent resource for anybody looking to do genetic consulting.
Mm. That's cool you say that. I've done Ancestry or 23andMe years ago before I even thought about the concerns. And it's cool that you were saying like there is some concern, let's say, about the data and the privacy.
Yeah,
Although you're saying the benefit outweighs perhaps the concern for the everyday living, health, and just for now, right?
for
Perhaps there's a
sure.
danger coming in the future, but may as well enjoy now and get healthier now.
Exactly.
So if you have some information or suggestions on the next stage of an elimination diet or any markers to watch once somebody, let's say, done the 23andMe, they've done the decode, self decode, so they know what foods to eat, and now they've changed their diet. What are some of the things they can look out for in terms of, is this food sitting well with them? Is it nourishing them? What are
Yeah. Well,
what can they do?
your body will give you telltale signs whether something's working, like, or whether a diet's working, like being bloated is one, having gas, having like itchy elbows or an itchy nose, or having like an itch that just feels like it can't be satisfied. That's another telltale sign of like a fungal issue. But if you want to get more testing, you can go through Viome or some gut microbiome company where they actually take your stool and they'll tell you exactly how the health of your gut is looking. And I was eating pretty keto-ish for a while. And when I got my gut tested, because I thought I was the healthiest person alive, and I got my gut tested and it was horrendous how terrible it was. And it really caught me off guard because I was avoiding kale, I was avoiding tomatoes, I was avoiding foods that influencers were influencing me not to eat, but they actually turned out to be my microbiome's superfoods, if that makes sense. And I started introducing these vegetables into my diet again, feeling amazing. And I'm like,
Well,
I am done listening to influencers. I'm going to start listening to the data and listening to what my gut is telling me.
so do you eat kale now?
Yeah, I do. Feel
Raw
fine.
kale, raw or cooked?
If I can, I cook it, but I'll eat it raw. I'm not eating a
That,
lot of it either. I'm just
that's
eating like enough to get some pigment in my diet,
mhm.
because
Tomatoes.
yeah, yeah, cooked
Do
or
you
uncooked, I feel
do you
fine when I eat them.
yeah? Do you mix tomatoes with other foods?
I tend to,
Because
yeah.
yeah, because there's like the Gracie diet, talking about tomatoes in isolation. I mean, there's nightshades. I've actually done one of those. I forget what it was, a biome test years ago, and I was putting raw kale in my smoothie every single
Mm,
day, and my gut was in trouble. I mean,
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't have any information on even like to look at my stools. Now I refer people into the Bristol stool chart. If anybody wants to take a look at that, you want to aim for a number 4, a nice smooth snake
Mhm.
coming out of your bottom. I think that's a really good marker to know, kind of like on the daily, and hopefully for somebody on the daily, if not multiple times per day, if food is agreeing with them. Actually, I want to add one more. So sneezing. If you catch yourself sneezing or kind of like throat itching right after eating a food, most likely there's a intolerance happening. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Are there any foods that you are avoiding now based on doing all this testing and such?
Yeah, definitely. I avoid gluten because I think most people should try to avoid gluten, and also just to learn what their food sensitivities are.
Hmm.
Because when you are eating a food that you're intolerant to or sensitive to, you're directly causing an immune response to your gut. And we humans, or we living creatures, have a finite amount of immune energy or healing energy available to us. So we really don't want the foods we eat to be triggering our immune system, because over the course of decades, that could lead to autoimmunity and a whole host of other issues. But soy is one thing that I tend to avoid, but more of like tofu. I tend to be okay with like tempeh if I eat it very sparingly, but sesame is another one that I avoid. But I wouldn't know to avoid any of this stuff if I never got tested for my food sensitivities. Turns out I'm also allergic to mushrooms, but I think it might have been a false positive because I take so many mushroom supplements that I have like antibodies in my bloodstream because I'm consuming mushrooms so frequently, like adaptogenic mushrooms. So
Which tests have you done for food intolerances?
I did that through my doctor. I went to a functional medicine doctor and she ordered blood work. But I know there's various forms, like you can do like skin pricks, you can do blood work. There's a lot of different ways you can get that information, but I think the easiest and fastest is the blood. But also, like, you can get false positives with that one. So
Mhm.
just take note of that when you're getting it.
It's interesting you talk about the false positives because I got a good amount of false positives when I've done Viome. So I've done Viome and I was eating, let's say, a good amount of beef and rice, and especially in the days leading to it. And my body's like, "Oh, you do not want to be eating those." And I knew that those sit well with me, but I think it's the quantity, as you're saying, about the mushrooms. Sometimes it's the quantity in a certain period of time, and that's for the ones that are going into the optimization part of things. That's a good sign of like taking it as you're getting back to balance, to balance things, and not more is not better. Also, less is more sometimes, but there's just a kind of a middle ground for everything based on so many things you're saying. Genetics, and the state of the immune system and just the state of the gut microbiome. And oh my God, so many things. So I want to touch on hormetic stress when you're talking about temperature. So the heat, cold. Are you doing any protocols of cold exposure, heat exposure these days? What's your
Absolutely.
take on it?
Yeah, I love heat. I feel the best when I go into the sauna more than 3 times a week. So, I've been going in the sauna since I was 18 or so. So, I've been going in there for about 10 years now on a weekly basis, and it's been a fundamental stimulus to my body. So, I've gotten more accustomed to it, but when it comes to cold, I love getting cold. It's never easy, but it's always worth it, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. I've recently started using a machine called the Vasper, and the Vasper is like a bicycle with an elliptical, but you have these blood pressure cuffs on your legs and on your arms, and there is 45-degree water circulating the cuffs, and then your back is on a 45-degree pad. So you're shivering, you're cold, but then you're exercising. So it's literally creating like it's cooling your body temperature, but also you're increasing your body temperature through exercise. It's just this cool device that I've been using to also achieve cold thermogenesis, but nothing compares to a cold tub.
Mm.
Cryo doesn't even touch cold water, in my opinion. And I've done hundreds of cryo sessions, hundreds of cold tubs, and definitely cold tubs are never easy. I find one thing that would really benefit a lot of guys in particular is cooling their testicles once or twice a day. This is an old Russian trick for increasing testosterone and vitality, and it 1,000% works. Like you would put it on your scrotum for about 10 or 15 minutes once or twice a day, and you'll see what I'm talking about when you try it. It just definitely increases your vigor, vitality, and it improves sperm health as well. So that's another way that I've used cold.
Is this a bag of ice like you're talking about? What's
Like
the
an ice
protocol?
pack. Yeah, like an ice
An
pack.
ice
So
pack.
you take 1 or 2 ice packs and you put them, like, right near your boxers. You don't wanna do it on your skin. You don't wanna burn yourself.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it you do it for about 10 or 15 minutes right when you wake up and right before you go to bed, and
Mhm.
it's potent. Yeah, it definitely
Wow,
works. Yeah.
that's cool.
I think all the guys are gonna try it tonight.
I love it. I actually have a cold plunge myself. I'm a big fan of the cold, and I go a few times per week. I
Love it.
do. I do want to talk about the balance also of the stressors of those. So, we're talking about eating certain foods can create a stress on the immune system, and then one would think perhaps that, oh, they should get into sauna and cold plunge. Like, what do you think? How would one determine if it's good for them to even go in the cold plunge or the heat, knowing that's another stressor, another
Mhm.
hermetic stress response that can be beneficial? But I think sometimes there's too much stress. I notice it with myself. Like I would sleep funky, my back feels a little off. I feel like it wants more heat to be able to move more, and then perhaps later in the day a little bit cold, not too much. But I wonder what's
Totally.
your take on the amount of stress and which types of stress and how to determine what to use.
Yeah, I think falling back on that principle of balance, like stress in abundance creates problems. It creates imbalance. And especially when you're getting sick or you just don't feel well, cold should be the last thing that you do. Because that old wives' tale of, stay out of the cold, you're going to get sick. That's really only true if you are sick or you're fighting something off.
Mhm.
But when you're feeling fine, definitely getting in the cold can improve your immune system, your vitality. But I find when you stress yourself and you are already stressed to begin with, it could be counterproductive for sure.
Mm.
I find heat tends to reduce my stress. Even if I'm feeling sick, heat feels good, but cold should really be reserved for when you're feeling good, period.
Mm.
If you have some like emotional stress or psychological stress, I find that's where cold could be really beneficial because it kind of brings you into your body and brings you out of your mind, if that makes
Mm.
sense. But yeah, I think developing interoception and developing like that inner awareness of what's happening inside of your body is imperative whenever you're pursuing health optimization. Being able to regulate your nervous system and to learn when something's appropriate and when something's not appropriate, I think is really, really important. And I do find a lot of people struggle with that because our minds, we are constantly like planning for the future, but our bodies don't really work that way. Like we'll think, all right, next Tuesday I'm going to do chest day, and then I'm going to go in the hot tub or the cold tub. It's like then Tuesday comes around and you're really not feeling it. It's like you got to kind of live more presently, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
us Americans, we're just very much thinking about tomorrow, thinking about the next day. We need to just take a moment. And just feel like, what do I need right now? You know? So yeah, hormetic stress is not good when you're feeling stressed, or at least when your immune system's feeling activated, but it can be good if you're feeling stressed.
On having the ability to determine what one would need at the moment, do you have a meditation practice? Do you have some breath work exercise that you do? What's your ways of being more in tune with your body and your emotional states to be
Yeah.
able to make those choices?
I think I'm always taking inventory on how I feel. I wouldn't call that necessarily a meditation practice, but some people might consider that a meditation practice. I'm always just like taking a moment to take a deep breath and to emphasize that exhale. I've done breath work, I've done meditation. I find immense value in when I do it consistently, but lately I've only been taking inventory through one breath at a time, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
I like to spend my evenings alone doing the sauna and going in the hot tub and cold tub back and forth. And I find that to be profoundly meditative and centering.
Going back and forth. Is this are you doing like a Russian banya style? What's your protocol there?
So my protocol is I go into the sauna until I feel like I really need to get out. And then I
Mm,
get out and I go right into the hot tub, but that usually only lasts about 2 or 3 minutes, and then I slowly inch my way into the cold tub. I try to make it the least stressful of a adrenaline spike as possible, because when you get into cold water, it's like immediate fight or flight, unless if you get in really, really slow. That's what
mhm.
I have personally found. So I've been doing this more at night, and you don't really want to get super, super cold at night because you'll stay up, you know. But I have been going back and forth, and just taking my time with it, making my nervous system feel safe to relax. And that has improved my sleep quality somewhere between 15 and 30%, depending on when I do it. It has been profound for my sleep for sure.
So sauna, hot tub, and then cold.
Yeah.
Cold
Yeah.
water, cold plunge. What's
Yeah, it's
or
like a
shower?
hot tub, cold tub. So it's like, yeah, it's about 44 degrees or so, 45
That's
degrees
pretty
or
cold.
so. Yeah.
What kind of sauna do you use?
It's a dry sauna. I use a dry
Trust.
sauna. But if I had it my way, I would either be in a Nordic sauna at like 220 degrees, or I'd be in an infrared sauna. I think they both have their benefits that are kind of separate from each other. Like you go into an infrared sauna because it literally heats you, and that's what's causing you to sweat, versus a hot room, which is slowly heating you. It's like the room is what's heating you, and in the infrared sauna, it's light that's heating you. So
Mhm,
it just penetrates deeper and it increases your internal temperature a little bit more
mhm.
from what I found.
Yeah, I like to call it like hitting you from the inside versus there's a hitting you from the outside, and that takes a bit more time to penetrate and sweat out
Yeah.
toxins and whatnot. I love to hear how you have quite the amount of knowledge and journey into biohacking, taking care of yourself. How did you get into this?
It's a good question. So there's a few different answers, honestly, to that. But I think the most potent one was the fact that my dad passed away when I was 4 from leukemia. And then his mother, and he was 42 at the time, his mother passed away when she was 39 from a brain tumor. So
Wow.
I think subconsciously I knew that I'm mortal and that there is a potential genetic thing that I would like to avoid if possible. So that has been one motivation. Another motivation has been to get healthy. I was overweight when I was in middle school and high school, and I really wanted to feel healthy. So I started pursuing weightlifting and bodybuilding. And I noticed on the online forums, there's really two perspectives regarding health. There's the bros that say eat 6 meals a day and protein, and lift 5 to 6 days a week. And then there's people saying maybe you should lift 2 or 3 days a week and eat 1 meal a day and practice intermittent fasting, and basically the more of like a longevity perspective of health. And
Mhm.
that has been the route that I took, because I realized at a young age that the 60-year-olds that I saw that I admired were not the ones that were on steroids that looked really muscular. It was the people with clear skin, vitality, that just seemed to be like emitting light. Those were the people that I admired. And that's how I kind of course corrected my education. And I started learning about this stuff at the age of 18. So I'm 20 or 19. So almost 10 years now for me. And also, I struggled with ADD as a child. And it honestly, I had to take ADD medication to pass high school. I would not have passed for sure if I didn't have that intervention. But out of high school, I just knew it wasn't sustainable. So I started learning about supplementation on how to optimize brain health, focus, memory, and mental clarity. And that has been honestly such a passion of mine for the past nearly 10 years now. And it's just been a really cool journey learning how the brain works. And that has been another transformative element to what now became BioHack Zack.
Mm. Thank you for sharing. What do you think ADD is a result of?
It's a deficiency in dopamine, or rather the brain constantly wanting dopamine. So you are focused on something and then your brain thinks, well, maybe you should do this because there's a reward, or there's a motivation to do this. So then you start doing that. Then you just, it's like your brain's kind of scattered, in other words.
Mhm.
And I have learned that this ADD medication, like Adderall, Vyvanse, while it can increase focus once you get a tolerance to it, the general, like what I've noticed that Adderall or amphetamines do is it just increases your motivation. It doesn't increase focus at all. It just makes you more motivated to initiate tasks and
Mm.
sustain that motivation. But there's actual compounds that legitimately increase your focus, that legitimately improve verbal fluency, like all the things that we want when it comes to mental clarity and neurology. Like there are things that actually help those things and don't degrade those systems over time. So I find it to be really fascinating, and it's been an interesting journey to learn that, because I used to think that Adderall is the reason I passed school, and it just shows me like I could have, if I would have known about it, actually improved my brain health over the past, handful of years, instead of potentially harming my dopamine systems.
What are some of the supplements you've taken to improve cognitive function?
That's a good question, man. There's Bacopa Monnieri. That's a really, really powerful one
H-
for memory.
How do you spell that?
Bacopa. And if you just type in Bacopa, you'll find it.
Okay.
You
Okay.
can get that on like Nootropics Depot, or there's even a company, Himalaya, that has it. There's ginkgo biloba for memory as well. There's also racetams, which is a whole class of supplements, but they're technically drugs that were developed by the Russians to help improve cognition for their cosmonauts.
Okay.
There is cerabelsin, which is a peptide, a brain derived. I might have pronounced that wrong. I haven't explored this one, but it is on my radar for sure. It is a peptide that increases growth factors in the brain, similar to lion's mane. So it's
Okay.
just fertilizer for new
Mm.
brain connections. Yeah, there's a whole class of peptides, Slank, Cmax. There's honestly so many, but I think what most people would benefit from is just a really solid lion's mane extract and some Bacopa Monnieri. I think those two things taken over the course of 90 days really, really improve just overall wellness of mental clarity.
Are those usually taken on the same day?
Yeah. Yeah, once or twice a day.
7 days a week?
I mean, I don't think you should take anything 7 days a week, except for maybe magnesium or Shilajit, you know.
Mm.
for the most part, it's not good to take anything every single day. It's good to give your body some rest from
Mhm.
something.
So cycling in some ways, perhaps 5, 6 days a week, taking a week
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
Okay.
On days you don't need it, don't take it. If you're gonna go to the beach with your friends, maybe don't take it that day. You don't really need it.
What about shilajit and magnesium? You were saying those perhaps every day. What's your take on those?
Yeah, I think Shilajit is one of those supplements that I could basically recommend across the board that'll improve people's mental health, hormonal health, and immune health. Shilajit, for those that are listening, it's a tar found in the Himalayas that is basically decomposed plant matter, and it contains like 80 plus minerals with humic and fulvic acid, which essentially helps absorb the minerals. And these are minerals that you're just not getting in your diet. That's really important for overall cellular function. You could almost look at it like the raw ingredients to producing various chemicals within the body, such as hormones and neurotransmitters. So people often report more energy, more mental clarity, better libido, better sexual performance in general. But magnesium is one of those supplements that most people are deficient in. So I have noticed quite a significant improvement in my baseline amount of anxiety. Like I didn't realize I was an anxious person until I started taking magnesium, and it kind of felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders socially, where I can really be present with people and I'm not like in my head about like what I should say next and stuff like that.
Hmm. Very cool. Is there a specific brand of shilajit that you recommend?
It's a company called Himalaya or Pure Himalayan Shilajit. That's what I take. That was recommended to me by my pharmacologist friend, Dr. Tyler, who I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of different brands, and I would definitely go for a reputable brand because when we're talking about minerals, there could also be heavy metals in there. So if they're not from a good source, there you could be opening yourself up to the possibility of taking something that's contaminated. So yeah, I would recommend pure Himalayan Shilajit personally.
Have you tested your minerals, heavy metals before?
I have actually I did recently, and it was very interesting. I had the most balanced electrolyte ratio than that person has ever seen on someone's first test,
Whoa.
but my NAK ratios were pretty low. I was actually pretty surprised how deficient I was in some of these minerals despite supplementing minerals for the last 6 months. It kind of blew me away, honestly, because if I'm deficient in minerals and I'm taking minerals on a daily basis, imagine the average person.
Mm-hmm. Was
It's
that was that a hair tissue mineral?
Yeah, it was hair.
Okay. What was the interpretation you got for knowing that you've been taking that so many minerals, taking care of yourself? What was the interpretation of the person reading the results to you, and how is that possible?
So he was saying that the balance of the minerals that I've been taking could use improvement. Like I haven't been consciously taking manganese or selenium, or boron. So like what he was saying is yes, I might be taking minerals, but the certain ratios that I was taking may not be conducive with optimal levels. I take everything with a grain of salt because this person has also like talked bad about genetic testing and practitioners, and like I kind of like I don't know, there's a little thing that just made me kind of wary about the information I was getting, but I still found it to be very interesting. I bought his product just to see how I feel taking it, and to be clear, I don't actually feel much different. I just feel good. Yeah, I feel good most days though.
I see. I think from what I've seen and heard, there are only a handful of practitioners that know how to read the results of an HTMA, hair tissue and mineral. Is it analysis assessment for everybody who's
Yep.
listening? That are actually very skilled and knowledgeable in terms of giving information on how to balance minerals. And I've seen a lot of people that are athletes, people that are into their health for decades, that get their test results and their magnesium is super high, everything else is kind of low, it's off.
Mhm.
And what I've been hearing is that in some sort of ratios, things just get kind of absorbed in the body in a way that is not bioavailable, and I don't really know. The things are kind of pulling in from one another, so it's quite an art to balance minerals. I thought it was as easy. I'm taking a bunch of trace minerals in the water, I'm structuring it, I'm taking shilajit, I'm taking mushrooms, I'm taking I'm getting sunlight, I'm grounding, and still a good amount of work to be done with an expert who knows how to balance minerals. It's an art.
For sure.
And from a friend of mine who was on the show, Matt Kaufman, he described his experience as a spiritual experience because he felt so much better by balancing his minerals after doing a million and one health protocols and training and
Wow.
resting and meditation. So it was a pretty cool story to hear.
I know Matt. Yeah,
Um,
Matt's the homie.
cool. It's
Yeah.
awesome. Let me ask you, so you talked about light, you touched on light, and I know a good deal about ionizing, physics of what's going on in the body. Can you share your knowledge on light and magnetism, please?
Yeah, well, light is a fundamental energy that we have co-evolved with. And basically, light is information. Different wavelengths of light tell your body different things about the position of the sun. But based off of the wavelengths, you could also turn on certain genes, turn off certain genes. So, do you see a lot of people doing red light therapy, for example? Red light therapy is telling the skin that it's sundown or sunrise. And essentially, your body produces more collagen to, I guess, protect your skin for the day of UV light. So, by doing red light therapy, and this is also, there's a lot of research that has to be done still. There's a lot of claims like red light therapy increases mitochondrial function. I subjectively believe that to be true due to the fact that it improves the rate at which mitochondria absorb oxygen. So it's very popular for people to get these light lamps in the morning so they can get that blue light to their face to wake them up. And I have found immense benefit from just getting light on your face in the morning, whether that's red light or blue light.
Mhm.
But yeah, light in general is a circadian stimulus. And when you optimize your circadian rhythm, everything about your physiology improves. Everything from your mental clarity to your DNA repair to your hormones to your immunity, like across the gamut. When you optimize your light, the light in your life, everything about your health starts to improve from there. So I find it to be like the baseline, like the fundamentals right there is like light, optimizing light is so important for just overall health. And it's something that it's almost like considered a nutrient to our body, and we're so malnourished in it in this modern world. But that said, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. So I I personally put on a mineral based sunscreen when I leave the house in the morning on my face because light does degrade your skin, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just over time could lead to aging of the skin. Um, but you also still want to give yourself that stimulus too, you know? So it's like that's that balance that we were talking about earlier. And same goes with magnetism. So magnetism and electricity, those are also fundamental energies that our bodies have been exposed to for millennia. And based off of the different wavelengths of the magnetic fields or electric fields, you could elicit various responses throughout the body. You could go for a walk out in the woods, even for 5 minutes, and you feel different. And it's not the vitamin D from the sun, it's likely the fresh air and the magnetism from the trees, from the earth, from space. So I personally think that if we look at health through a physics perspective, through a perspective of wavelengths and ion exchanges, we could really start to understand how different therapies or different foods affect us. And yeah, I feel way more balanced and healthy over the past 4 years since I've started incorporating these perspectives into my regimen. And it's been very rewarding, honestly.
What's ion exchanging?
Yeah. So ion exchanging. So essentially, there's a few different. Okay. So if you go to the root of everything, whether you're taking a drug or you're eating a banana, when you break it all down, we're simply talking about the exchange of positive or negative electrons. And based off of those electrons, you could essentially create health or create imbalance in your body. For example, if you're inside all day and you're on your computer or on your phone, you are accumulating a positive charge in the bloodstream and in the body. And it is essential for you to ground or to release that charge and absorb some negative electrons. So basically, it's the fundamental reason why we are able to experience energy and why we need food for energy. When you boil it down and distill it down, we're just talking about electrons at the end of the day.
Hmm. Are positive electrons protons? Is this the same thing?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
okay. So, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, okay, so say somebody's inside, just like we are right now, having a conversation. Some computers and other technologies were not grounded. A good amount of protons is building up in the body, let's say, in an unbalanced way. And then to balance it, we would be walking outside barefoot, touching the ground, which has. Does the ground have more electrons? I mean, I know some things about it, but I don't, remember. I know the whole science
Mhm.
and physics of this. Does the ground itself have a ton of electrons? Does it? What's going on in grounding?
Yeah, the Earth does. The Earth does.
Okay.
So we're connected to a massive PEMF mat called the
Mm,
Earth. PEMF stands for pulsed electromagnetic fields. And yes, so when you take the rubber soles off of your feet and touch your feet to grass, mud, sand, there is an exchange of electricity that occurs that promotes balance within the body. And it sounds really woo, but like they actually have done a lot of research on this on the blood. And as we are in these environments that elicit more of a positive charge on the body, causes like our red blood cells and platelets to kind of stick together and clump. But
mhm.
when they're exposed to magnetism, they separate. So it actually provides better blood flow. I believe it reduces the viscosity of the blood.
Makes sense.
So that's why it also improves oxygenation of the body, because when your blood is flowing more effortlessly, it's able to get into the tiny little capillaries that feed all of your cells with oxygen.
Do you ground every day, every morning, every evening? Do you have a protocol?
I try to. I try to. I'm not perfect. I'm human. I'm living in an apartment building, so I'm not near the ground. But I do like to do it before bed. I find that improves my sleep. I do have a grounding mat as well, although subjectively I don't feel any different and I don't see any difference on my heart rate variability or resting
Mm.
heart rate or my sleep quality in general. So I do believe that there are grounding mats that actually work. I just don't know if I have found it yet. But my protocol involves just at least at some point every day going outside and grounding. Now, I'm also lucky enough to have technologies like the amp coil and the biocharger at my disposal to where I can ground through technology, through pulsed electromagnetic fields. So that's actually something that I do every single night before I go to sleep is I do an amp coil session, which also improves the chemistry of my blood and helps me relax.
What's the amp coil?
The amp coil is a device that has basically a giant Tesla coil that you'd put on your stomach or your chest. And there's an amp connected to it with an app that has a bunch of different sound frequencies that get projected into the coil itself, which distorts the magnetic field which causes essentially resonance inside of the body. So it can improve let's look at it this way for the listeners. So like if you have like a C flat tuning fork and then you take another C flat tuning fork and you ring one of them, they'll both end up ringing because the frequency coming off of one fork vibrates the other fork. Same goes within the body. Your liver has a certain magnetic signature. So does your pineal gland and so does your thyroid. And depending on the sound frequencies and the magnetism or the magnetic frequencies, you could actually create harmony within the body. But you could also create detoxification. You could kill pathogens because viruses, bacteria, fungus, parasites, mold, there are certain frequencies that debilitate them. That I wouldn't say it necessarily kills them, but it significantly weakens them to where your immune system can take over and do its job.
Oh, that's so
So I
cool.
use that every night. I use it every night, or let's say 5 nights a week.
How long is the session with the hemp coil?
About 30 minutes.
30 minutes. Wow, cool. So that's the biohacking, part of the biohacking you're talking about, using technology to mimic what nature has to offer, and perhaps in abundance, but not as much in abundance in the Western world. Here in the United States, not as available. I think
Yeah.
for the reason of antennas out there, 5G towers, computers, and just motivation. And I think it gets back to the motivation of people wanting to get to a certain goal. And this is also why I think a lot of people have ADD. And I do want to circle there that I think ADD, which I've been told that I have ADD as a child, and some of my friends in school had Ritalin, or however they were calling it. And my mom refused to give it to me. She's like, if he's not interested in learning this, then perhaps it's boring. Perhaps they're not teaching it in a way that is engaging. What I have heard is blue light in extreme cases, with not getting a full spectrum of light. So fluorescent lights in schools, let's say, or Target or Walmart or whatnot, and then not having a magnetic balance, and the ion exchange. All these things build up this form of disease, so somebody is out of ease, and perhaps their dopamine and serotonin is all off, talking about circadian rhythm. And now they're looking for dopamine because they want to feel good. So they're looking for constant sources of dopamine. And guess what, people? Instagram hits the spot for that, or TikTok, or however, social media, an email, checking the email a bunch of times a day, looking for that reward, kind of like a slot machine. Is there anything interesting there to hit my dopamine? Because in the body, I'm feeling not that great about my experience in the five senses. So just some perspective, and I'm not saying I have any data on this. I've heard a few things. I don't have the articles for you. I don't have the research, but that's what makes sense to me and of the things that I've heard. So hopefully that's helpful to people that perhaps experience ADD, or catching themselves or not catching themselves and seeing the data that they open Instagram 290 times per day. So
On point. No, you're absolutely right. Like all those things that you just mentioned, like they affect, like, let's say, like the electricity and the magnetism, right? Like they're affecting something called the calcium ion channel within the cells. And this is responsible for the basically the flow of calcium in and out of the cell. And if you are in a balance, or if you're in an environment with with EMF, you will notice more inflammation in the body. And when you have more inflammation in your body, your brain does not work nearly the same as when you are low in inflammation. So that could explain a lot of what kids are feeling.
yeah, and I'm actually standing on a grounding mat right now.
There
It
we
is
go.
it is from it says here ground therapy. I think I got it on Ultimate Grounding, something like that. .com. Check out the Earthing movie documentary. I have been told as well that the grounding mats do not work as well as standing on the ground outside. So
Yeah,
there's some
definitely.
conducting, and I checked the grounding in the wall that I have in the, from the grounding of the electricity is correct, and it's working, but it's not like standing on the, as you were saying, like the big PMF mat outside. I think it's like the derivative of the earth is not as nearly strong and does not provide some of the ion exchanging. And once again, I do not have the data on this or the
So
science down, but it does not feel as good. It's something I think I'm protecting myself to some extent of buildup of protons. I do feel after doing a podcast, after even holding a phone for a few minutes in my hand, like inflammation building up in my fingers, in my head, in my whole body. And I mean, I think at this point, it's a necessity for me to go grounding. Otherwise, I won't be functioning that well. And I used to work on computers all day. I used to be a web designer, web developer. I used to work on computers day and night since I was a child, and I don't know what happened. I like to think that I'm vibrating higher now, and I have better attunement into what's going on around me. So now I can actually feel those things. And before I was just like I was ignorant to those conditions and symptoms happening in my body, and now really have the desire and motivation to go and balance myself more often and stay away from the technology that I still love and appreciate, as we have the opportunity to record right now and share this information globally. So yeah, the balance, getting back to the balance, a balance with technology. I'm curious, with your journey with biohacking, taking care of yourself, you have a good amount of practices, you're learning about this. It sounds like, and I think a lot of people's journeys. I was born with scoliosis. There's some of us that start this journey perhaps out of fear that we don't want to, one, let's say, die early because we want to experience life, let's say, to the fullest and be grandparents at some point or whatnot. And also we want to feel good in our bodies while we're here. As I've been evolving in my journey, I find more reasons for taking care of my body. I think, as I touched on this briefly, with my, let's say, hopes that I'm more attuned to life in general on the earth and whatever else is living and breathing that we can't see. There's a benefit in taking care of our bodies. This podcast is about understanding how the universe works, so we can enjoy life more, we can become more whole. And I want to emphasize that taking care of our bodies, the vehicle of consciousness, I like to call it, the instrument of consciousness, is very important to do so. Because if one is fatigue, not feeling good in their body, inflammation, disease, imbalance, most likely they're not going to be able to pick up on the subtle gifts of life, be in high awareness of what's going on and whatever else is the universe has to offer them. That is a good reason in the past few years of why I've been continuing to take care of myself. What are your thoughts? What are your motivations these days? I've been on this journey for a while. You're jacked, you're not overweight anymore, which, I said you were there in school. How are you operating these days? Also, okay, I'll come up with this one. How are you operating these days of taking care of yourself? What are the motivations?
Mm. My motivation, my why statement, I think, for what I do is I want to feel as good as possible. I want to help others do the same. And ultimately, I want to experience the healthiest possible version of myself that could exist, because then I could be a much better husband and father for my children and my wife. And I think ultimately my deepest motivation is to just be able to hand off my genetics to my offspring and have them be the best possible genetics that could have existed. If
That's
that
that's a,
makes sense.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful mission. Do you have
Yeah.
kids?
I don't. I don't.
Are you married?
I'm not.
But you have the intention. I think that's beautiful that this is already on your mind. You already have, which is, I think, is one of the greatest responsibilities, duties, and gifts, is to have a family and to have the motivation to hand off genetics and an earth that is conducive for the most pleasant and beautiful experience that humans can have. I really, really salute you for having this intention.
Thank you, brother.
You're in a romantic relationship right now?
Recently out of a 5-year romantic ship. So I'm on the beginning of the journey of singlehood right now.
May I ask why the relationship ended?
Yeah, it was ultimately we just grew apart. I think she would say the same. Yeah, we grew apart. It was a mutual thing that we both agreed that there'd be more for us to learn not being together than being together. I feel like our patterns kept coming up and we kept trying to work on them, but ultimately we both needed to do work that took separate paths to do, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Are you doing any work to grow emotionally in some ways or spiritually?
Absolutely. Yeah. My motto this last 3 months has been feel to heal. And I've been taking a lot of time to just be on my own. And I'm typically a very social person. I'm a quadruple Libra. So
Mm,
I am very much relationships oriented. And I think that's also a reason why we split up, because I wasn't able to like hyper focus on our relationship because I had so many in my life that meant a lot to me.
mm,
But what I've been doing to feel, for one, psychedelics have definitely helped unravel layers within myself that helped me feel, honestly, that helped me realize what I'm feeling by kind of shedding layers so I could actually see what's in front of me or what's within me. But going in the sauna too really does there's an emotional element to being in the sauna. I'm not sure if you've experienced this, but when you're in the sauna, you immediately just get deep. And I think it's because you're maybe with your community and everybody's suffering together. But the conversations that I have in the sauna tend to be very emotional and very deep. But also there's devices like the brain tap. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the brain tap, but it's a light therapy device with sound therapy. Basically, you have light in your ears, light over your eyes, and it's playing binaural beats.
mhm,
And it could basically cause brain entrainment. And when I'm feeling like an emotional welling occurring, like I want to be antisocial, I'm feeling where I'm not really sure what I'm feeling, but I'm feeling emotional. I've done the brain tap and had profound emotional releases that rival what breath work has made me feel. Like it was really something to experience. And what I've also been doing is painting. I've been loving painting. It's been an amazing therapy for me to kind of get out what's inside, what's like trapped inside, and to tap into my innate creativity.
wow, that's amazing. Everything that you're doing is absolutely inspiring and amazing. I'm curious about a few of those. First of all, I want to say that those are expanded states. That's how I like to define them. The sauna, painting, the brain tap, psychedelics, of course. It's a state that is not of the normal state where we're talking right now. And speaking about a wavelength of beta brain waves, it's just a different wavelength. We're in a different environment in that way, with the mind, body, and spirit. I'm curious. I just wanted to kind of, I'm backtracking on psychedelics. Have you done a guided journey? Have you done it on your own, friends? What, if you might, if you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I do. Psychedelics are, without a shadow of a doubt, the most important thing I've ever done as a spiritual being and as a human being. To backtrack my story a little bit, so out of high school, I was hanging out with kids that you probably wouldn't want your kids hanging out with, and there was drugs involved. And I started using hard drugs on a very regular basis for like a year or so, a year or two. And it was psychedelics that literally made me analyze my life and realize that this is not my destiny. And I needed to 100% 180 because the path I'm on is not the path that's right for me. And that was the beginning of years and years and years of exploration and honestly a Kundalini awakening, for lack of a better term, where I essentially had to go through a journey of the dark night of the soul, not on drugs, like literally, where I had to learn how to not be around people, how to meditate, how to like what the different tenets of yoga, the eight limbs of yoga. Like I had to basically initiate my journey into health and wellness through darkness, through absolute necessity, because of a couple of instances where essentially I had glimpses of psychosis within expanded states. And that started to basically turn into a manic anxiety that plagued me, where I couldn't even be around my mom because I was so anxious. And it was a physiological feeling, it wasn't psychological. So I knew that if I wanted to be healthy, I needed to start doing the work today, right now. So when it comes to psychedelics, I haven't sat with Aya. So I haven't had a guided ceremony in that regard, but I believe, or I know that like my soul is very comfortable in those states, if that makes sense. Especially when they start getting turbulent and scary and where life and death really starts becoming the lesson you're supposed to learn. I wouldn't say I'm comfortable, but I have the most profound experiences when I'm alone. And yeah, I feel like friends often that are curious, they feel safe around me to experience those things as well, you know. But I do hear the call to sit with Aya because I feel like whenever people talk about a guided ceremony, that's really what comes up, at least in my mind. And I've had the opportunities and they almost panned out, but you know how the medicine works, and just it just didn't quite pan out, and it worked through me in a different way, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah,
so cool. I just want to touch on a little something there. You said comfortable in those states. I've heard somebody say comfortable with being uncomfortable,
yeah,
and I think it's a skill and a gift, and it's a gift only not only to you as you're saying, it's to your people that are connected to you in this life, and also to generations. And as people that share as MOTs of the Jews, I've done a good amount of healing generational trauma, especially on expanded states using psychedelics, and it's been really hard. And it's also been very honorable, and felt very grateful that I'm capable of doing this
100%.
for
Yeah.
generations, past generations, to future generations.
Yeah, I come from Holocaust family myself, so there's definitely some trauma in my DNA. And I think comfortable is not the right word because it's usually not comfortable. It's the ability to surrender and have faith that you are okay and that what you're doing is safe and important and good. Ultimately, that it's good. And then you just have trust in God.
Well, I think that's right there is the most for this living sentence I've heard. So surrender, faith, and trusting in God and what we're doing. And I think right there, surrender, faith, trust. Those are the words and themes that I think are the most important, most beneficial to having a meaningful and joyful experience. Those times, sometimes they're not going to be joyful, as you're saying, they're not going to be comfortable, but this is what leads to more comfort. This is what leads to transmutation from darkness to light.
100%. Yeah.
I'm curious. So, you high school, you're seeing some crowds that are people may not want to be surrounded by. There's some darkness. So, did you have a psychedelic experience as early as high school?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
wow.
yeah, in high school, I had done everything except for maybe methamphetamine. Like literally, like I growing up in Florida, there are drugs in schools, unfortunately, especially in my school. I had done MDMA, mushrooms, and LSD as early as 10th grade.
Wow.
And I had, I never had like a profound awakening at that age because I was with not the right people and I was also having fun. I was experimenting, but it was really when I needed it. It was really, I didn't know I needed it at the time, but I scored some mushrooms and some LSD and I took it and started doing art, something I had never done before that,
Mm.
and proceeded to have my first theogenic experience where I was merged with God. I was just literally in a room listening to Jimi Hendrix and drawing.
Wow.
And I felt that like Kundalini raising energy, that like pure creative sexual energy just raising through me. And I realized that my life would never be the same after that. And that prompted me to start exploring LSD and start exploring these molecules more frequently than I should have, probably twice a month or so, having like a journey. And it only takes 2 or 3 months of doing that on LSD for LSD to teach you don't do that, you know,
Mm.
where I had a moment where it just felt like my brain got scrambled on the beach. And it was just a really weird feeling. It was like I was out of reality for like a second or two. And it felt like there was just damage that had been done to my brain. And I didn't think anything of it because it went away. And just let's pretend that didn't happen. And then I went to sleep. I felt fine. Next day felt fine. And then the next day I smoked DMT for the first time. And it was forced on me. I didn't want to do it. But the people that I was with were like, no, no, try it. Come on. And there was like 8 people in the room I've never even met before. And I so I hit it and I found it very hard to surrender. And I felt like that resistance. And then I surrendered and everything was fine. But then the next morning when I woke up, I walked to the kitchen and had the most profound panic attack I'd ever experienced. And from that moment on, for about 6 months, I had a manic anxiety where it was like I was anxious for no reason, and it was like a 10 out of 10 anxiety. And that was so important for me to experience. And I realized in retrospect that that was the Kundalini awakening, because that prompted me to really start to truly research about neurology, about spirituality, about different practices like sauna and cold tub and heat exposure and meditation and yoga. It really was like the initiation that I had to go through. But when I was going through it, it felt like the worst chapter of my life. It felt like I broke my brain, honestly, and I thought I would never do psychedelics again. And then it wasn't for about another year where I even entertained the idea. And when I did it again, it was like I had a newfound reverence and respect for them. And it was really so healing. It was, thought I would never do it again. And then when I did it, I'm like, wow, like I understand the break was necessary, but there's more lessons to be learned.
Wow. How old were you during this experience with the 6 month anxiety, manic, panic?
20.
20. Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like you smoked 5-MeO DMT. Am I correct?
No, it was
Do you know?
NN. It was
And
NN.
NMD. Wow, really? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. Wow.
I had to heal. Ultimately, I had to like, I think God made me have that experience so I could really pump the brakes and really start to take inventory on my life, because I was moving way too fast. And now I have just a newfound respect for all molecules. I truly believe the motto for everyone that uses psychedelics is less is more, because you could always take more, but you can never undo what you've taken. And the most significant experiences for me have always happened in lower dosages. Always.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've had full blown shamanic experiences on a gram of mushrooms, like
Nice.
full blown entity contact and everything on a gram. And the reason being is because I was by myself. I allowed myself to truly absorb the energy in the room and to truly dive inward. But some people, I mean, they eat 2.5, 3 grams and they don't even have a mystical experience. I think maybe I just think due to my genetics, maybe it's my Jewish lineage, or I just feel like I am predisposed to have mystical experiences on anything, on life itself. I don't know. I don't even need to be on anything to have a mystical experience. So I think I'm very blessed in that, but also with great power comes great responsibility.
It's beautiful. I think two things are at play. First, for people who are taking higher dosages, and let's even just call them whatever, 3 grams or more, and they're in a setting where their attention is going outwards. They're looking at
Hmm.
trees, they're looking at their friends, they're laughing, they're moving, they're not paying attention to the subtle energies. From my experience and what I like to do, if I'm doing a journey in whatever dose that is, I use a sleep mask. I use silence and I surrender physically. I lay down and try to surrender as much as I can with my body language, kind of a shavasana. I'm in corpse pose. I'm doing some sort of a death in order to be reborn again and to awaken again to a new version of myself.
Mm.
So that's one thing I want to touch on for the audience. And then I think there's something for specific souls. My understanding is that the spirit and the soul never dies. We're loaning this body. This is our loaner for this life. And perhaps the more evolved the soul is, the more mystical and profound experiences they're going to have, the more calling they're going to have to do deeper work in this life. So that's part of what I think about soul evolution and aid in souls. Do people talk about all souls? I think there's such a thing. And yeah, I mean that's pretty cool. I mean you've had quite the amount of experiences at a very young age. I mean,
Yeah.
20 to have all of this going on already and have these profound realizations and courage to do these things on your own and heal yourself and research and be of service now, and realizing that you have this responsibility to be of service. It's very cool, and I think it's very necessary.
I think
Um,
I've lived many lives, like just in this life that I've lived, that you're experiencing here right now.
I want to ask you about the art. You said you were doing some art, and this was like years ago, and you still do some art. Is this? Are you using pencils, markers, paintbrushes?
Yeah, I tend to use acrylic paint, but I've recently been exploring pour overs and drawing. And for me, I don't like every month I don't paint. It kind of comes up and then it like cycles, if that makes sense, where I'll paint a lot and then I don't touch it for a few months. And then I just feel like this calling to like to just get it out. But yeah, I've used colored pencils. I've used stencils like to do like different geometrical paintings and stuff or geometric drawings. I wouldn't say I do any one thing. I've been really loving pour overs though recently. I've been finding a lot of solace and just, I don't know, like seeing where the paint goes. I don't know how to describe it. It's cool.
Did you learn from anybody on how to paint, on what to do? You just went for it.
Just went for it. Yeah.
So interesting. That's it's pretty unique for masculine men. I've gotten into painting recently when I was hanging out with Matt Kaufman and David Green, not too far from you in Florida, during a mastermind retreat. And we had somebody lead us and they had stencils, but I was not introduced to it. It never crossed my mind. I find it interesting that they already have the calling to do that, just like you have the calling for Aya. Things call you, call, you listen, and then you take action. Do you have an easel? Do you have canvases? How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, I have some canvases all around actually. Yeah, I don't have an easel though. Because I wouldn't call myself like a serious artist. I just like to do art when I really need it. And I've noticed when I feel the calling is usually after I cry. Like when I cry and I feel like an intense emotional release, or after a profound psychedelic experience, I just feel like this yearning to just sit and put it on canvas, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
My best pieces have always been after a journey or after an intense emotional release.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Do you hang them? Look at
Yeah,
them?
yeah, I could even show you that if you don't mind.
No, I would love to.
Yeah, so this one right here was I drew the night I woke up on that mushroom and LSD, and I
Wow.
thought I'm going to frame this at some point. This one also, during my initial awakening, I painted. This one took me a couple weeks actually. It's not like the greatest, but it's
It's
still.
beautiful. It's
Thank you.
beautiful.
And then this one is my recent favorite. It's called the Rainbow Highway.
Wow.
And then I got these over here as well.
That's so cool. You're very talented. I love it.
Thank you. And it's wild. I did these two about a year apart. I didn't actually intend on making them the same colors or the same shapes. But when I painted it, I realized looking at the other painting, I'm like, yo, like these are the exact same colors, making the same spiral shape. And it almost is like they were meant to be together,
Wow. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
it
I
was
love
cool.
I love how tuned in you are and how confident you are in your manhood and in letting your feminine side express itself. It's absolutely amazing. I hope this inspires a lot of masculine men listening to this podcast. I have a community that I co-lead of masculine men. It's called Men of Integrity. I'm actually wearing the
Mm,
t-shirt right now.
that was
And
cool.
it's a brotherhood of divine masculinity. Everybody goes through a 4-day and 4-night retreat that involves some plant medicine, an initiation, and then everybody joins the community. And yeah, I mean, there's a good amount of men that I can think about that have these abilities and capabilities and surrender to those things and confidence. But it's still very rare to come across men. I think especially younger men. Some of the men in our community are in their 50s. It takes a while to be
Thank
able to
you.
be in that confidence. So kudos to you. I'm curious. Do you know how you were led to that group in high school? And I'm backtracking into being attracted to that darkness of the hard drugs and the less pleasant things of life, let's say.
Definitely. It was bullying. In middle school, I got bullied. Well, I'll backtrack a little bit more. So I would say in elementary school, I was a skateboarder and I didn't realize it at the time, but like, I guess I was kind of, you'd consider more of like a popular kid. Like I had a lot of friends. I had things to do on the weekends and stuff. But then in middle school, I stopped skateboarding. I started gaining weight, and I was going through this weird, awkward phase where I was gaining weight. I didn't really have friends. And that's actually where I started pursuing videography and photography. But I was like a loner. I wasn't really like hanging out with people. And I felt very insecure ultimately about how I looked, how I felt in my own skin. And then in eighth grade was the first time I smoked cannabis. And it was like the strongest psychedelic experience. Like as having such a young brain, like it was profoundly visionary and scary. And I didn't like it, but I was with a popular kid, and I felt like kind of cool, you know? And then I started, smoking cigarettes and smoking cannabis every week and then every day. And then it just slowly turned into like an identity thing where I was known for being a person that you can find things that you might be interested in, and like, or I was around people that would, and that kind of just turned into an identity, honestly. And then in high school, I definitely rid myself of that like insecure energy because I started like having more social proof of like having a lot more friends and being invited to parties and whatnot. So like that's really where it came from, is from insecurity, bullying. And it just makes me think now, just like talking about it, I almost imagine what it would be like if I never did, because I was like into videography and film back then. And I feel like I could have been something that really special if I would have just kept doing it for that amount of time. Because I'm still interested in it today,
Mhm.
Just makes you think,
Any regrets there?
No, definitely not. Yeah. I don't
Nice.
have any regrets, honestly.
That's
It was
great.
all meant to be. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's great.
Partially because I've done the work though, if I just let myself kind of be complacent with how I'm feeling and how, I don't know, if I would have just been lazy on myself, I would absolutely regret it. But just been, I just had to be the masculine force in my life that has been missing, and just
Yeah.
try to embody that as much as I can.
Do you have siblings?
I have a younger sister who's disabled.
No. So you had to take on the masculine man role in the household.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I've been cooking since I was like 8 years old.
Wow. What a
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah.
Are you close with your sister?
She lives in New Jersey. Not as close as I would like, but also like she has some like she's not autistic or anything like that. She's just kind of like special. And I'm not as close to her as I would like, but I would say I'm not close with her. She's just, there's like a limit to how deep I can go with her just due to her circumstance.
Mhm. How about your mom?
Yeah, I'm close with my mom.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I really love, learning about you and your story here on live. I mean, live now. I mean, episode will be released in a few weeks, but it's been really an amazing and fulfilling experience for me, and I'm sure for the audience, hearing your story and your knowledge, wisdom. To close this conversation, and you've already told me a bunch of stories that blew my mind, but if there's another story perhaps that comes to mind that blew your mind in recent times or past times that you'd like to share with the audience, it'll be fun to close this conversation with one.
There is a lot, man. I don't, I feel like the stories wouldn't do it justice, but more so the message is what's more important. The first message is magic is real, and magic's real. It really is. And you can have anything you want. You really can. And with that power means that you should dream as big as you possibly can. I've just had some instances, had honestly countless instances where best case scenarios unfolded in front of me that I didn't think were even wildly possible. I've had just amazing synchronicities where it's like, there is no way that wasn't a wink from God. I just want the listeners to realize that you can truly live any life that you want to live. You just have to decide it and start aligning your actions in the direction of that life, and dream big. Really dream as big as you possibly can, as possibly as you want, because it's obtainable. It really is obtainable. Like, for example, my job here in St. Pete at BioHack Studios is an answered prayer. Like, word for word, I was talking with a friend, and we were saying, like, if you had to work for somebody, you had to work a job, right? What would be the best possible situation for you? And my answer was, I would like to have a wealthy person hand me the empty shell of a business with a bunch of cool biohacking technologies where I can use them every day if I wanted to, and teach people how to be the healthiest versions of themselves. And within 2 years, that exact situation happened to me. So, and then I've had situations from that experience that I'm extremely grateful for, and that I realized that a majority of people don't get those experiences. Like, I can't share who, but like training A-list celebrities and professional athletes, household, like people that I've known who they were since I was 5 years old. You know what I mean? Like, really, like, top of the line people. And then also just to experience all of this magic has been so amazing. And it just makes me want to be the clearest vessel possible to help others feel the same.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a powerful message. I know that's a powerful message, and I know that's going to touch people's hearts and inspire them. And the story also of how you, I want to call it manifested, but you created your life, and especially the life of your dreams, dreaming really that big and making it happen. So kudos to you. I'm very excited to see how your journey keeps unfolding. Where can people connect with you, find you?
The best place is Instagram. It's where I'm the most active. You can follow me at BioHack Zack, BioHackZack. And that's the best place to like kind of see what I'm up to. And one thing that we haven't talked about today that is kind of relevant to our conversation is I've been researching the unfolding UFO phenomenon for my entire life since I was about 6 years old. And I tend to share a lot of the revelations that are happening real time. So if you guys follow me and you're interested in the UFO topic, I really like to expose my viewers to the most cutting edge, like up to date information regarding the disclosure of the UFO phenomenon, which is happening in our lifetime.
Really?
It's
Wow.
really cool. Yeah.
Phenomenal. I love that. I did not know that about you, and that you have this passion and mission as well. So I'll be on the
That's my
lookout for that.
deepest passion, actually.
Really?
That's actually like, yeah, like
Wow.
I have this whole row is just UFO books. I have more too.
Wow.
Yeah, I definitely have been interested in this for a long time. It feels like my dharma to help people get ready for this merging of, I guess, eras. Honestly, we're entering a new era of humanity, and it's going to be difficult. It really will. So just anything to help ease that transition, for sure.
No, that's so cool. Well, now I know what's the next podcast is going to be about. So stay tuned, people. And I'm excited to learn from you and hear about this. I think you're correct also about this new era that is coming. And it is going to be difficult and beautiful, I think, at the same token. There's going to be some extreme emotions, feelings, events happening based on what I'm hearing. I don't really know, but that's what I'm hearing. That's my intuition, what it's telling me. And the more adaptable we are, the more we take care of our bodies, the more we listen to our intuition, the more brave we are, surrender, trust. What was I'm thinking now, it was the surrender, trust that I was thinking about, that you were saying,
faith.
and for having faith. And
Have
that's
faith in God.
beautiful. Absolutely. Amazing. Zach, thank you so much. This was amazing. Looking forward to our next conversation. Looking forward to meeting you in person next time we're down in Florida.
Absolutely.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, guys.
Well, lovely beings, I hope you enjoyed and were inspired by this conversation as much as I was. You can find the full show notes and all episodes on my website at yonihavana.com/podcast. If you are a man and you are called to do transformational work to become a better man, to find and grow the divinity within you, and you are longing a community of masculine men who share a passion for growth, please check out Men of Integrity by going to moi.community. Lastly, if you are enjoying the Yoni Havana podcast, I'd be so grateful if you take a moment to leave us a rating and a review on your podcast app of choice. The Yoni Havana podcast is a brand new show, and your support would help reach new people by rating higher on the algorithms. Also, your feedback would help me deliver the best experience to you as the show keeps evolving. Much love and a big aho. See you on the next one.